And for our next discussion, I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Michelle Kudhail, who's the Clinical Director at Resilience Neurospecialists, and Chris Morden from Ectron and Resilience. So again, as I did with Miriam, Michelle and Chris, if I can come to you firstly, Michelle, and maybe you could just say a few words by way of introduction about yourself, your organisation, and your areas of focus, and then I'll come to Chris to do the same. Michelle.
Of course, thank you very much, and thank you to NR Times for, I guess, to be involved in this session. So I'm a neuro by background, with over 30 years of experience. I'm not going to tell you how many, but within the NHS and the independent sector, particular areas of interest are in gait analysis, mood analysis, balance rehabilitation, and spastic management as well. As I worked in both the NHS and independent sector, so an expert witness with a specialism of neuro, and also provide training, postgraduate training as well in various countries. And more recently in the development of resilience neuro rehab with Chris and some other colleagues, in order to be able to bring together our range of experiences in order to try and provide the most effective, provide best outcomes for people within sort of a community-based and rehabilitation setting. That's me in a nutshell. I'll let Chris introduce himself.
Chris, thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. So about 16 years ago, myself and business partner Alex Jones became distribution partners with Tyromotion, Austrian company that at the time was a startup entering the robotics field with a hand rehab device. And over the years, that business has grown and become more of a solution. And we'd come to represent some other companies as well, such as Exobionics, Technobody, AirTech, and Fessia. So we have a range of companies that we provide the expertise for in the UK. And so we've been supplying all kinds of rehab services from NHS hospitals, small private businesses, individual therapists who have needed certain devices. And over the years, we've seen the change really, what's the phases we've gone through to get to where we are today. And we've gained a great deal of experience from seeing how the adoption has not always gone as planned and where it's been integrated really well. Some excellent examples. And we've taken that experience after meeting Michelle and our other colleagues, and said, can we put this together and start from the beginning and make, if you like, the ideal process. And I use the word process because you can buy the gadgets, you can buy the robotics, and you can have a great expertise from your clinicians, but it's how you glue all of that together. And that's what we're working on currently. So hopefully we'll see more of that in the next few months.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Chris. Now, we'll try and make this a discussion because there's sort of three of us in this session. So, feel free, Michelle and Chris, to come in on the questions that I ask. Firstly, can we talk a little bit about exactly how that process of integration works, getting technology and skilled therapy to come together in a really joined up way? How do you do that? Is it happening at the moment, and what kind of impact's that having? If you like, to make this easier, Michelle, if you start firstly, then Chris can come in.
Okay, I'll start when relevant. And I know we're talking future as part of this presentation, but because I trained such a long ago, it was in the days before we had hoists to transfer patients. For those who are clinicians in the audience, we used to do the Australia to move people up in bed. So it was very staff intensive and with very limited equipment that we had at our fingertips. So things have changed quite considerably over the last, particularly I would say the last 10, 15 years. A range of different pieces of equipment are available. And I've experienced being in situations where a new gadget, a piece of equipment, but if people don't know how to use it, or that that wanted that equipment and that used it regularly, goes on, a piece of equipment then gets left in the corner of the department without being used, so it was not being effective at all. So I've seen areas where equipment is not being used, and what we want to try and achieve is the best mix of clinical experience. I think as clinicians and therapists have a range of experience and tools that we're able to use to be able to provide assessment and identification of patients' impairments, and what they're lacking, what they're not able to do, and to make the decision about what treatment is necessary. The technology provides us with a greater range of opportunities to provide therapy in a different way, providing a greater level of intensity, the number of repetitions that are required in order to learn a new motor skill. And as you see from kind of the QAF video at the beginning, you know, sometimes it takes people to try and help somebody walk, and they're generally only able to walk for short distances. So the time and staff intensive, and we want to try to be able to make best use of the technology that's available in order to provide a much more effective way of working with patients.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Michelle, we're having a few problems with the sound at your end, but I can certainly make out what you're saying, so we'll persevere. I'm not sure there's much you can do about it. If there is, maybe you could have a twiddle, and if not, I think we can make out, and I certainly can make out what you're saying. Keep ahead. Chris, same question to you, really. Integration, how to make it work effectively and how to deliver the benefits from it.
Yeah, certainly. So I think for me, the start point is understanding the motive for investing in technology, and fundamentally, what problem are you trying to solve? And Michelle actually highlighted a few examples. If you go into a service that's investing in tech, and we're not clear on this, then you can't possibly have a good business case. And that business case is the baseline. It's the fundamentals. So understanding the problem, and really this is what technology does in all aspects of life. It solves problems for us. Is it a productivity problem? Is it a communication problem? Is it we need to give more people visibility of their outcomes problem? And once you understand the problem, we can then try and design a solution that fits those needs. And the needs can vary quite differently. Some of the tech that we see now has been, if you like, pioneered in other markets. So if you go, for example, to the German-speaking countries, they're predominantly hospital-centric, where people stay in larger rehab centers, maybe 100 plus beds, and stay for many more months, if not years, have all the rehab there. Whereas in the UK, we tend to leave hospital sooner, are more reliant on community services, accessing outpatient services. You can't always transfer the technology assumptions and business cases literally from that German market to the UK market. So be really clear on what you're trying to achieve right from the beginning for the service provider, whether it's a hospital or it's a small private business owner, is the first part. And then really what you need to do is recognize there is some form of change management. We're not just going to plug a robotic device into the corner, train the staff how to use it, and then expect 3 months later that they've all embraced it and it's, benefits are clearly being made. There's going to be other things to consider, and the more tech you add to that to create a solution, the more you need to think about this. It could be the environment, the space that you're in. Is it the staff mix of therapy skills? And what we notice is most commonly is the pattern of patient scheduling, for example. The frequency in which the patients are in the gym to use the technology may need to change, which has a knock-on effect. So once you start changing one thing, you have to change others. So a successful integration will ask questions and understand what problem we're trying to solve, and then what needs to change around the technology to make it a success. And consider it as a change management process rather than just buying gadgets.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry, Michelle, did you want to come back in there?
No.
I was going to move on. Maybe you can pick this one up firstly, Chris. How do you go about ensuring that the help and support there is available to therapists so they can make the most of neurotechnology?
This is something else that's changed over time. If we go back 15 years ago, there was a little more, if you like, fear and suspicion of technology. You know, the evidence and research hasn't landed fully. There tends to be quite a long lag between starting research and, you know, the results being there. And meanwhile, the tech's already rushed off and developed new robots and new ways of doing things. So it was more difficult, but as time's gone on, and many of the therapists now are much more open to tech. They've come from university and grown up, and they may now be head of department, and there's already a greater acceptance and understanding of the problem solving that I mentioned earlier. So that's made things easier. It goes without saying you need comprehensive training. But one of the, I think the strongest things we can do is to come back and ask questions. I called it a town hall meeting. I did this the first time after implementing some tech in an NHS site, and there was some grumbling that things weren't quite as expected. So we had this town hall meeting and had everybody, the whole department there, and said, right, let's understand what the challenges are. And that's where we came up with the environment, the training, the space allocation, and the patient scheduling. So I think just involving this team right from the beginning in, you know, understanding what those changes might be gives you the greatest opportunity to take the team with you. And because we've now had experience over, you know, over the last decade, we can normally anticipate what that might look like.
Thanks, Chris. And Michelle, same question. Helping therapists make the most of neurotechnology.
Yeah, I think, as Chris said, it's been a continuous changing environment over the last 10, 15 years. And we know that it takes time to facilitate change, particularly when looking at trying to translate what's been evidenced in research into clinical practice. I think the evidence suggests 15 to 17 years before kind of research is then adopted into routine clinical practice. And I know that initially there was a lot of fear and skepticism within the therapy population when this technology was becoming available, in that, you know, they were worried that we were going to be taken over by robots and that there'd be no need for therapists at all. Just strap you into a robot and off you go. But that, as Chris has said, has very much changed recently, as people are more accepting in that we can use technology as a adjunct to our therapy, taking away from our skills, but it's enabling us to use our clinical reasoning in being able to identify what somebody is not able to do, and then selecting the most appropriate treatment for the most appropriate patient in order to be able to generate the best outcome. It's about adapting, changing, having the opportunity to involve all members of the team. I think you always need to have a few clinical experts who have that area of specialism or interest in a particular piece of equipment or a particular area. Just, for example, sort of experience gait analysis, balance rehabilitation, where we have skills in order to understand how the technology works, how we can use it with each individual patient, and which patients are getting a good outcome. I think it's having that clinical experience, having the knowledge of how the technology is being used, and so how to use the data that we're able to obtain from the technology in being able to then analyze how somebody is changing or improving. If they're not improving, how can we do that slightly different? Or if we're able to demonstrate improvements, it's being able to then evidence both to the patient to be able to keep them motivated and demonstrate how far they've progressed, but also using that data in order to be able to share with commissioners or for other members of the team that might need information. Certainly gathering of that data, that to help form how to integrate it within a medical environment.
Thanks, Michelle. And Chris, just coming back to you, we've touched on innovation. Could you maybe say a little bit about innovation, the new approaches, and the things that you see now coming over the horizon?
Yeah, certainly. I think if we think of the phases we've experienced over the last decade or so, we are on the brink of another phase, which in some respects is coming faster than people's ability to already access what's available today. But over the last decade, we've seen the implementation of mainly robotics plus computer-assisted tech. However, during that period, one of the big challenges has been how to kind of interface the machines with the hospital systems, make the data more available. There's a lot of potential for assessing patients, doing the testing, and using that data throughout the rehabilitation process, not just for the initial assessment, but ongoing. And I see that's now where we'll see next is a digital revolution within the rehab devices. And you could argue that the hardware, the robotics, yes, they will get replaced with newer, more advanced robotics, but there will be diminishing returns on the hardware. We're kind of where they can get to into some respects. And where the big opportunity will be is how we use the data. So we want to see in resilience a greater emphasis on analysis with patients when they enter the rehab process, but to keep that data with them right the way through, not just in the outpatient center, but when they go home. And for some of them, they will carry that data with them for the rest of their lives. And the potential for them to see what they've achieved from when they left hospital to what they're still doing now, where they may already have fallen out of the stage of, more physiotherapy and occupational therapy to create those early goals, and maybe more focused on their health and fitness and conditioning. Yeah, more rehealth as opposed to just the rehabilitation. And where we will see good improvements now is through that data, how we can keep the data moving with the patient and empowering Michelle and her team to make more effective therapy plans and be more efficient. A little bit of artificial intelligence may come into that. I know it's a buzzword these days, but we're already seeing how a camera can view somebody from the front and behind, using that intelligence to learn what the movements would look like in different directions. So some exciting times ahead, but the big challenge will be how we interface in medical industry with the hospital systems and all the security implications you have with data these days.
Thanks, Chris. And Michelle, new approaches, innovation, what do you see coming down the line that offers reasons for optimism?
I think, as Chris said, looking to the future when patients have maybe finished their period of sort of intense rehabilitation, I think we see some fantastic examples of intense inpatient rehabilitation. Miriam's touched on kind of what they're aiming to do at NRD. There's some great that happening already. I think Patients then get discharged home, much earlier, as Chris said, than some of our European countries, and then there's this almost gap or a transition for them getting used to being in a community-based setting. And then they might have access to some neuro rehab teams or some outpatient clinics. Again, they get to a phase where actually you can't carry on that inpatient, that rehabilitation for long term. And I think to a point where we're able to support people once they're at home, and trying to support with their long-term needs in being able to keep monitoring, maintenance, preventing them having to come back into the hospital setting. So in a much better situation in order to stop them for the rest of their life, because so many of the people that we work with are young people who are going to have their disability for the rest of their life. So supporting people in the community and at home, I think, is going to be important.
Thanks,
yeah, if I could just come back, Alistair, on that, because Michelle mentioned patients being at home. If they're in hospital for months, they're at home for years, and the technology hasn't really entered the home, hasn't solved the problems of rehab at home so far. And I think if we consider the outpatient centre as a hub closer to where the patient lives, then that can be the hub which then connects with the home therapy, and developments in digital will enable much more advanced and sophisticated tele-rehab. We're looking at a system called homing currently, which will look and feel like the therapy the patient did in the outpatient centre with the equipment when they were there, but continuing at home with support from the clinician. Lots of live feedback and data to support and motivate them to keep that going. So that home setting is going to be, and solving the challenges there is critical if we're going to meet the demand that we have.
Sorry, Michelle, please go ahead.
Just adding to what Chris has said, I think the homing device enables us to use telerehabilitation to be able to observe the individuals are at home. It enables us to be able to give them a range of exercises that they can do at home, and them doing their exercise at home and interact with them at that time in order to be able to give them feedback, adjust their program if they're making progress, and also give them access to programs that they can then do at home on a daily basis. But as therapists, we can't be there on a daily basis, but we know to continue to improve or to maintain their abilities, they need to continue pressing. And I think like the homing device and better teleportation will enable that to happen in the long term.
Thanks, Michelle. Chris touched on challenges, and I think one of the reasons for optimism is our ability to overcome challenges that there are. As we draw towards the end of this discussion, it would be quite interesting to hear your thoughts on what the big challenges are and how optimistic you are about being able to overcome them. I don't know if you want to pick that up firstly, Michelle.
Yes, I think some of the challenges that we face within the community type setting is having the number of people around that we needed to provide that level of intensity of therapy once somebody's come home from hospital. So using some of the technology that's available enables us to overcome the challenges of not being able to have in a hospital setting, like have a whole range of different therapists and assistants to be able to support somebody walking, for example. So being able to provide the intensity of practice within a community setting, and in a safe way. We have to challenge our patients in order to get best out of them, and being able to do that in a safe way is one of the challenges. And I kind of got a question for Chris as well, that's okay, just because I know a whole range of different pieces of equipment, and the challenge has been trying to determine which of the best pieces of technology technology in order to use. You know, of the internet and world therapeutic events we're able to access now, there's a whole range of different equipment that's out, almost to a point where it could be quite bewildering in how to select the most appropriate piece of equipment, and often very expensive. So how to decide really what's the most suitable pieces of equipment is quite a challenge. So maybe my question, Chris, would be, what is the significant piece of innovation or innovative technology that is changing current practice?
Well, given that we've had various robotics on the market now for a number of years, and we've got some really good, it's evolved from maybe more emphasis on exoskeletons now to more end effectors. Obviously, we use the gait trainer Lexo, which is an example. What this device and other applications really benefit from is dynamic bodyweight support. And it might feel a bit specific to talk about that area, but it does make a big difference right across the rehab gym, whether it's within the gait trainer or whether it's learning to sit to stand or regaining balance. The sophistication of these devices now are so good that you can control how much body weight support you want to give somebody with a button like a TV remote control. And it means that it can be applied, as I said, very dynamically. So it could be to learn to fall over safely, to how to climb back up off the floor, how to get to your phone to call for help. Or in the example of gait training, conventional gait training, you've seen it with parallel bars where people are supporting themselves with their arms and walking only, maybe 30 steps in a session. With the bodyweight support, you can learn to take the weight through your legs and to balance better and reduce the amount of support that you're giving people as they get stronger. What do you think, Michelle? Do you feel that kind of applies widely enough across the gym to be like a critical, element that you would need?
Yeah, certainly. I think from the days where you had to have therapists in order to be able to study, to be able to take a few steps, that's changing, and having access to the body weight support harness means that we're able to do a much wider range of activities in a much more functional setting. So for example, the Lexo enables us to be able to adjust the amount of support somebody needs, making them do work, giving them the intensity of the practice, taking steps over sort of a longer period of time. So if somebody's able to use it for half the number of steps that they're able to do, much greater than somebody working with 3 therapists with the support. And I think the example of balance that you've given, something that particularly when we're training balance rehabilitation, is that patients get so used to using their arms for their balance that they're using their legs, and it's their legs that they need to be able to balance, and we want to reduce the reliance on them using their arms in order to support themselves up against gravity and stop themselves from falling. So use that body weight support, enable them to be able to practice their reactive balance activities in a safe way. That means that their balance is less likely to fall when they're walking with community. So gait and balance training is something that I see this having huge benefits.
Well, we could give you another 2 hours of innovations if
I sense that you could, Chris and Michelle, but unfortunately we don't have the next 2 hours. But I do think that this has been such a fascinating discussion. I'm sure we'd like to find that time in the future to have a discussion about some of the specific themes we've covered here. So can I just thank you, Michelle and Chris, for joining us today? It's been a great discussion. And I'm sure as that discussion is shared and networked, there'll be a lot more questions and issues that maybe we'd like to ask you to address if you've got the time. So on behalf
Yeah,
of our Times today, thanks very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts.
thank you very much.
Thank you.